Anger doesn't do anybody any good. And there's a lot of negativity going on right now. This video is about anger. Let's be honest. Being angry makes you feel good. It gives you a sense that you've been dealt a huge injustice, which makes you the one in the right. People will stand by you because they agree with you, thereby creating a mob mentality. They're all like, hey, you're right, it's the other person's fault. Well, and sure, letting out your anger is a good way to let off steam. Take one of the most prominent writers and philosophers in history, Mark Twain. Various sources tell that Twain had a slight reputation of being a hothead. While reading Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I read a passage that said Twain wrote to a man who had ticked him off, saying, "The thing for you is a burial permit. You have only to speak, and I'll be sure that you get it." He also wrote an editor who dared to correct his punctuation and spelling, writing, "Set the matter according to my copy hereafter, and see that the proofreader retains his suggestions in the mush of his decayed brain." Writing those letters made Twain feel much better about himself, but his wife never actually sent the letters. We've all been angry. From the time I was little, I was taught it's okay to be angry, but never okay to be disrespectful. It's also not okay to lose your temper and hurt others because of it. Ephesians 4:26 says, "In your anger, do not sin." So before you go shouting obscenities at people or writing things that set your keyboard on fire, think about what you're actually doing. Sometimes we let out our anger in private, and while that's better than letting it out in public, the fact is, the real you is who you are when nobody's watching you. Another quick fact, science actually proves that anger has negative effects on our brains. It decreases serotonin levels that makes us more susceptible to more anger. We all know and have heard this at some point in our lives, but how many of you actually take it seriously? Most of the time we just get angry, and you know why? Because it's easier to just sit in our anger and stew. Maybe it's because we think it's better to be righteously fuming and battle-ready instead of being, "Oh, woe is me." The point is, anger doesn't do anybody any good. When we go to church and we're told that judgment belongs to the Lord, basically we're being told, now you're going to encounter hardships in life and people are going to do you wrong. But don't worry about it, just sit back, because God will hold them accountable in the end. This leaves us at a crossroads. You want to be the godly example and leave your bad guys and demons all to the Lord and trust that God is going to fulfill his ultimate promise in Colossians 3:25. Whoever does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. But at the same time, you feel like it's important to protect your dignity and to prove to yourself and others that you're perfectly capable of taking care of yourself. Sometimes, however, the latter causes us to follow our anger, which leads us into sin, because unresolved anger gives the devil a foothold. I've been thinking a lot about Ezekiel 25 lately. The book of Ezekiel holds that each man is responsible for his own actions, and chapter 25 gets pretty grim. It talks about the Lord making proclamations against the nations surrounding Judah because they'd all profaned the Lord, his land, his people, his sanctuaries, basically just spitting in his face. He made proclamations against Ammon, Moab, Edom, Philistia, and a smattering of others, and I may be pronouncing those names wrong, so I'm sorry. If you read through chapter 25, focus on the ending of each paragraph. You'll notice they all end with God saying, in verse 5, "And I will make Rabbah a stable for camels, and Ammon a resting place for flocks. Then you shall know that I am the Lord." In verse 7, "I will destroy you, and you shall know that I am the Lord." In verse 11, I will execute judgments upon Moab, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Verse 14. I will lay my vengeance according to my anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance. In verse 17, I will execute great vengeance on them with furious rebukes, and they shall know that I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon them. Now, I may be referring to the Old Testament here, but, and I know that some people are going to be like, oh, God is such an angry God, and I thought God was pure love, and stuff like that. But the reason the gospel offends these people is because his gospel is intolerant of sin. A gospel that does not confront and call out sin is not the gospel of Jesus Christ either. And if we're not hungry for Christ, then it might be because we're too full of ourselves. Now, I know I just stirred the pot, as some might say, but I'd like to quote A.W. Tozer here. Christians should be the boldest people in the world. Not cocky and sure of ourselves, but sure of Him. Being angry is something that I've had to work on, and I'm still working on it, admittedly. Maybe I just get it honestly. But the need to be negative is ultimately a myth. So stop looking for a reason to be angry and hold on to it. Let it go. If you're thinking easier said than done, is it because you can't let it go or don't want to let it go? Forgiveness is always a choice. Forgiveness is also a liberating and freeing feeling. If you don't feel liberated when you forgive, then there's probably an underlying issue in your heart that you need to address. But that's not for me to do. If God Himself can go from wrath and anger in the Old Testament and move towards forgiveness and mercy in the New Testament, you can move past your anger and resentment and be more forgiving yourself. That should be the ultimate benchmark for us. Thank you for sitting down with me and listening to me speak on this quick little thought that I've had passed in my head. And I hope that you will take this to heart, really. And also hope that you will subscribe, obviously. And I also hope, above all else, that you have a blessed day. Thank you.